Nevada, produced by Ghost Town Wonders.
Good morning. Today we're going to go out to a town site called Rhyolite, Nevada. It's about 100 miles north of Las Vegas. It's an old town that was created about 1904, 1905. Had a short life, grew to a population of about 6,000 people, as I understand, and turned into a ghost town. Has been vacant ever since 1917, I believe, is what they said. So we're going to hit the road. We're going to go out and take some videos, and I'll make a YouTube video showing the history of the site. Let's go explore.
I'm panning this valley so you guys can get an idea how large this area is. Those hills way out there that you can see are actually on the other side is the Death Valley. So we're looking kind of west right now. But again, just panning of where these prospectors were looking for gold. Just like most of these discoveries, there's always some kind of character associated with it, and this is no different. There was a gentleman by the name of Frank Shorty Harris. He was one of the best known and revered prospectors of Death Valley. He was born in July 21 of 1857 in Rhode Island, but was orphaned when he was just 7 years old. In the late 1870s, he rode the rails west to seek his fortune in mining. He spent a lot of time in several mining camps, including Leadville, Colorado, Tombstone, Arizona, and the mines of Idaho before making his way to Death Valley. Standing just 5 feet 4 inches tall, he soon took on the nickname of Shorty and quickly earned a reputation that he could smell gold. Known throughout the region for having found several good claims, he never worked or developed them. Instead, he spent a lot of time talking and drinking in the saloons rather than doing the hard labor of mining. Known for his wild exaggerations and tall tales, most of his stories made him out to be a hero, but in spite of all this, he was well liked. As the story continues, in the summer of 1904, Harris partnered up with a man by the name of Ernest Cross, and they discovered a Bullfrog Mining District. According to a tale, as the two were preparing to head out for the day, Ed was cooking breakfast when one of Shorty's mules took off. This is where the exaggeration of these tales come into play, and they just totally fascinate me. But continuing with the story, according to this tale, he was chasing after the mule. He stubbed his toe on a rock and fell down. As he was getting up, he looked around before letting out a yell. "There it is, the strike of the century. Forget the breakfast, Eddie. Let's get to Goldfield and get this assayed." Incredibly, this ore assayed about $3,000 per ton, or about $80,000 in today's dollars. Shorty went on to tell the story about how his find came about. He said the rock was green, almost like turquoise, spotted with big chunks of yellow metal, and looked a lot like the back of a frog. This gave us the idea for naming our claim, so we called it the Bullfrog. Shorty wasted no time to get to the saloon to celebrate his new find. While Shorty was on a binge for almost a week, Ed was out working on lining up the sale of the mining rights. Unfortunately, Shorty would come out on the short end of this great find, as while he was celebrating, he gambled away his share for $1,000 in a mule to a man named McGilliard. His partner, Cross, however, joined with McGilliard and found the original Bullfrog Mine, or formed the original Bullfrog Mine. Later, Ed sold his share for $25,000, and he and his wife bought a big ranch in Escondido, California, and retired there. Shorty continued to look for gold, and as luck would have it, he found a couple of other mines that were very, very successful. Unfortunately, Shorty drank through most of the rushes, not profiting from his finds. However, Shorty continued to find gold and seek out partners. His last find was somewhere over near Ballarat, California. This time, Shorty didn't gamble away his interest and ended up with about $50,000 in shares of stock and about $10,000 in cash. Shorty continued to prospect for the rest of his life, though he never had a mine he could call his own. At the age of 78, having been ill for quite some time, he died in 34 at his cabin in Big Pine, California. But before he died, he had requested to be buried at the bottom of Death Valley beside his old friend named James Dayton. He requested that the following epitaph be placed on his headstone: "Here lies Shorty Harris, a single blanket jackass prospector." In honor of Frank Shorty Harris and Ernest Cross, those that first discovered gold in this area, and again they called it Bullfrog Mine Site, go back and show you a couple of historical photos, and then we will go out and explore and see what it looks like today, kind of give you guys an idea. This is what was the original Bullfrog Mine Site. Not much left there today. You can kind of see remnants of the actual mining operation that was going on. Kind of give you guys a pan of around the hills there. The road that I had taken to get up in here was the old rail bed. So we're going to walk up here and take a little bit more look and see if we can find some things and some remnants of the old mining site.
As I was reading, this is one of the original mine strikes. And below me, actually, I don't know if you can see in the distance, they had an original tent city about 1904, but because the water was so expensive to haul to this area, they combined the town into Rhyolite about 2 or 3 miles away from here. And Rhyolite grew in population, and the hauling of water was far cheaper. You can see the rail bed. That's the road that I came in on. All the rails been pulled up, of course. But this was a real high producing mine site right here, so they had rails come up here to pick up the ore, or the process ore. Not sure what's up there, but I'm going to follow this somewhat flat road. I don't know if it was a ore cart road or if it was just a regular truck road. But let's just go keep exploring, see what we find.
Yeah, this is more of the area for the original find at Bullfrog Mine Site. And then I'm just kind of panning the area. You can see kind of a road of some sort up there. I don't see too much in the way of tailing, so I probably won't climb up there and look at that. But just again, panning the valley there, you can see the whole area. And then I ran across this structure right here, so I started walking down. And the closer I got, the more it really looked very closely to some of the very old pictures. When I compared the old pictures to what I'm seeing here today, this doesn't surprise me that this is the exact same location. You can see it's heavily deteriorated though. So you notice the head frame and the shack around the shaft. So it looks to be the right place to me. So that's it as far as the original mine strike at Bullfrog. And so let's continue our story with the development of Rhyolite. The town of Rhyolite was not even the original town in the area. The way it's explained by Shorty was that when he and Ed got back to the claim a week later that they first discovered after they had their assays done in Goldfield, more than 1,000 men were camped around his claim, and they were coming in every day. A few had tents, but most of them were in open camps. One man had brought a wagon load of whiskey, pitched a tent, made a bar by laying plank across 2 barrels. He was serving the liquor in tin cups and was doing a fine business. Armagosa and the original Bullfrog camp were the first 2 settlements in the Bullfrog district. The towns were less than a half mile apart and situated at the original Bullfrog strike. When it became apparent that piping water to the site was going to be too costly, the two camps packed up and relocated to the second Bullfrog location, combining into a single town. Bullfrog was the clear leader among the initial camps in this district. The new camp had several hundred inhabitants, a post office, and numerous businesses. Wood frame buildings were beginning to replace some of the tents in the growing town. However, by 1905, Bullfrog was supplanted by its neighbor to the north just a mile away, and Rhyolite burst onto the scene and quickly became the district's premier camp, destined to become the greatest city in a vast and desolate desert region. The Rhyolite town site was platted in January of 1905 by a group of claim owners that decided they might do better promoting a town at the site of their claims rather than working mines on them. Rhyolite was laid out with 36 blocks, and lots were initially given away to the miners to get the camp started. New discoveries placed Rhyolite at the center of the district's most valuable mines. In February, the Montgomery-Shoshone mine was discovered north of the town site and would become the district's largest mine. By the middle of 1905, Rhyolite was a clear winner in the contest to become the district center. Bullfrog businesses began moving to Rhyolite, and by the end of the year, Bullfrog's commercial district was largely abandoned. Rhyolite was still a tent camp as summer started in 1905. In what was certainly one of the grandest tent cities in the Old West, an estimated 2,000 people were already residing in the new settlement. Like so many of these settlements out here, Rhyolite's first and most important challenge was water supply. 3 separate companies competed to bring water to the new city. Water was delivered from various springs in the area, piped for miles, and stored in tanks above the city. The first water system was online in July of 1905. That was the start of Rhyolite, and from then on things moved so fast that it made the old-timers dizzy. Men were swarming all over the mountains like ants, staking out claims, digging and blasting, hurrying back to the county seat to record their holdings. There were extensions on all sides of the claims, and other claims covering the country in all directions. Many wood frame buildings were built during the second half of 1905 and into 1906. It wasn't until the fall of 1906 that a significant rock and concrete structure started to appear. Some of those, to a certain extent, exist today. Like this building, for instance, is known as the John S. Cook and Company Bank. It was constructed in 1907 at a cost of nearly $90,000. It's about $2.5 million today. The 3-story building was located on the southwest corner of Golden and Broadway streets and was the tallest building in town. Completed and opened for business in January of 1908, the first floor housed the John S. Cook Building Corporation, or Banking Corporation, which was shortly absorbed by First National Bank of Rhyolite. It had two vaults, marble floors imported from Italy, mahogany woodwork, electric lights, telephones, and inside plumbing. Brokers' offices utilized most of the second and third floors, while the town's post office occupied the basement. Post office was the last business to leave that building and in town in 1919. Prior to that, the owners of the building started to dismantle it by taking the wood and many of the other interior components out of it starting about 1910 when the banks left. This is what the structures look like today. These are said to be one of the most photographed buildings in the entire town of Rhyolite. The photo you see here is not the original schoolhouse, but when Rhyolite held his first town meeting, it was decided that a school needed to be established, which was completed in 1906 with an enrollment of approximately 90 children. By May, there were 250 children in the original schoolhouse. It was built very hastily, and it was blown down in 1906 by heavy winds. And the school was then held in the county hospital building. In the fall of 1906, it was approved by the city council for a new school. However, the new concrete structure wouldn't be open until 1909. There were several setbacks during the course of construction of this school. One of them was that the town started to really struggle to stay alive after the panic of 1907, and a lot of failures in banking and whatnot really did a lot of damage to the town. By the end of 1909, the population was well below 1,000 people, so who really knows how many children actually attended this school. It's a beautiful building with, you can see, a Spanish-style roof and a bell house. This is what the school building looks like today.
Another one of these buildings that are starting to wear down. Once they lose their roof systems, they start to deteriorate rather rapidly.
This is some of the rubble left over from what used to be known as the Overbury Building. It was a 3-story stone building that housed the First National Bank of Rhyolite. The building opened in June of 1907. You can see the vault back there. Just panning through the front, you can see that must have been the front foyer. We had a grand, beautiful front lobby, I'm sure. Wanted to take a look inside this vault. You can see everything is all concrete, and then the roof up above is all steel, so it was obviously very well made and looks rather large in size at that time. This is what the Overbury building looked like when it was first completed in 1907. As time went on in Rhyolite, it became a ghost town as early as the 1920s. This is a photo about that time showing the deterioration of the Overbury building. You know, I'm surprised at the amount of garbage that I see here that may have been left over from the old days. You can see lots of shards of glass, lots of tin cans. This was a big city. They claim population got as high as 10,000. And I'm sure they had an organized way of throwing things away, and that they didn't just discard outside the window of the building. However, as you can see, all these cans,
You know, maybe that was later on when this town became less populated. They say the last resident was in 1924, and the town's been sitting vacant ever since. That rock wall lured me up here from way down in town, and the closer I got, the more I knew what it was. It's a fireplace, probably from a residence that was up here one time. There's a much more modern looking building right here. It's even got glass still in it, which is a great thing. It means vandals haven't got to it. Got an old tin roof, rock sides. Beautiful looking wood door. Wood sill around the window, and the window's still there, intact. Impressive. Cool looking building. See the chimney stack right there? And of course, the natural rocks from nearby. Yeah, you can tell by the hinges. I'll stay out. Oh yeah, that's locked and welded tight. No getting in there. Yeah, as I just demonstrated, there's no getting in that door. It's all steel and welded shut. Although you can see that it has some windows there.
Yeah, what this is the town's jailhouse. Like many mining camps, Rhyolite was sometimes prone to violence, with his rugged men and abundant liquor flowing from its many saloons. Though Rhyolite never had a reputation such as many camps of the Old West days of the late 1800s, the settlement did suffer its first killing in October of 1905 over a dispute in Wendell's saloon. In May of 1906, another killing occurred in Rhyolite when a man named Steve O'Brien stabbed his wife with a miner's candlestick. When a town deputy sheriff and the judge showed up, the crazed O'Brien stabbed the judge. In retaliation, the deputy shot and killed O'Brien. Months later, in October of 1906, two men named Tom Malone and Jack Mayer had a dispute over money, and soon Malone lay mortally wounded in the street from Mayer's lethal gun. Malone held on for almost a day but died the next night in the hospital. Mayer was arrested and tried, but in the end he was let go due to finding of self-defense. At the time of all this violence, Rhyolite did not even have a jail, and the lawmen had to transport the offenders to a jail in Bullfrog about a mile away. At a cost of $15 a day to rent the horse and rig, the town began to see that it had a need for building its own jail. These photos are the original Bullfrog jail. This building right here, it's the backside of what is known as HD and LD Porter General Store. But the more I look at this, I'm not sure it's a general store. Every time I come up here, I look more and more up to that front bay. It almost looks like a service bay for vehicles. We'll take a look around the front of it and you'll see a little bit more what I'm speaking about. You see these grates right here are open down to that service bay. And to me, those look like they may have been just some large roll-up doors. However, that's just me speculating. Everything else that I've read said that those were gigantic windows because these guys were great salespeople. These brothers came over from Randsburg, California right away when they noticed the opportunity in Rhyolite. These two came in 1905 and built this general store in 1906. It was also in 1906 that an enterprising miner named Tom T. Kelly built a bottle house out of 50,000 beer and liquor bottles. The bottle house still stands today and is quite the attraction. The first railroad reached Rhyolite in December of 1906. Rhyolite's already explosive growth and development intensified with anticipation of the arrival of the railroad. It was also very evident that Rhyolite was in the midst of a substantial boom. Building was going on so rapidly, and every street in town, carpenters were getting about what is equivalent today to about $30 an hour. By June of 1907, Rhyolite saw the arrival of yet another passenger train. It was called the Bullfrog and Goldfield. The Las Vegas and Tonopah Railroad built a passenger depot in Rhyolite. It was actually built from cut stone that was hauled from Las Vegas. The Las Vegas and Tonopah Railroad concentrated on improvements to its property, including the rail yards at the Rhyolite and its passenger station, which was finished in June of 1908. Although events would prove that passenger traffic never warranted the construction of such a large and beautiful station, the company reaped the short-term benefits of publicity for being the owner of what was rightly called one of the show places of southern Nevada desert. From what I can read, it looks like almost all of the rail services were discontinued around 1916. In 1936, a Las Vegas saloon owner by the name of Norman Westmoreland purchased the entire ghost town of Rhyolite at a bankruptcy auction. He sank about $250,000 in today's dollars into remodeling it into a nightclub and casino, which he named Ghost Casino. Open only during the winters, it became a gambling hotspot for visitors from California's Death Valley. It became famous all over the country and was a noted tourist attraction. Westmoreland ran the Ghost Casino for 10 years until he grew ill and tried to sell it. There weren't any takers and he died, so his sister, H.H. Heisler, maintained the place as a museum and gift shop into the 1970s. This is what the train station looks like today. It's completely fenced off. The building is fully intact, though, on the outside. Can't get in there. It's owned and operated by the BLM. It's fenced off, so therefore nobody's been able to vandalize it. But as you can see from the outside, it's in great shape. I wanted to share some of these photos to show you the heydays of Rhyolite. By the spring of 1905, there were 3 stage lanes bringing supplies to Rhyolite. The stage also brought mail from Goldfield, but the service was irregular in the beginning, as we're told that the first postmaster they had there was a woman named Anna Moore, who was just 18 years old, and was her husband Joe was her assistant. These are some more photos of the heydays. That was even showing where they extended the track in one location. And they even had circus come to town. They say they had baseball games and all kinds of other entertainment in this city at one time. However, in the summer of 1907, the American economy was showing signs of weakness as a number of businesses and Wall Street brokerages went bankrupt. In October, the respected Knickerbocker Trust in New York City and the Westinghouse Electric Company both failed, touching off a series of events known as the Panic of 1907. This was to spell the doom of Rhyolite. In the wake of the initial business collapses, stock market prices plummeted and depositors made a massive run on the nation's bank. Because most of Rhyolite's investors were from the east, they began to withdraw their backing. Smaller mines began to close, but the devastating effects of the panic did not dramatically affect Rhyolite until the spring of 1908. In addition to that bad news, they had a magazine of the American Automobile Association of Southern California interviewed Shorty Harris in 1930, and he had some things also to say about the demise of Rhyolite. Shorty's take on the demise was this. He said, "That's what killed Rhyolite was stock speculation. The promoters got impatient. They figured that money could be made faster by getting gold from the pockets of suckers than by digging it out of the hills. The bottom dropped out quick out of the stock market and the town busted wide open. She died way too quick. Most of the tin horns lid out for other parts, and that's a sure sign a mining camp is going on the rocks. By 1910, the production at one of the largest local mines, the Montgomery-Shoshone, had slowed way down, and there were only about 611 residents left in the town. In March of 1911, the directors of the Montgomery-Shoshone decided to shut the process down. By 1915, the town had only 20 people, and the next year the power and lights were turned off permanently. By 1920, Rhyolite's population was just 14, and his last resident died in 1924. I did take a photograph of the cemetery nearby. None of the famous characters seem to have been buried in this location, and it's been abandoned and not very well maintained. Well, this is the end of this video. I thoroughly enjoyed the time out there in the field and doing the research. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this short history and video the same. Please hit subscribe. Leave your comments on the YouTube channel. I appreciate you guys watching.